Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Greetings, friends, and welcome to this November 11, 2013 edition of Nightcast. A huge international relief effort is underway in the Philippines. And friends, I'm going to roll in the background. I believe I have some aerial footage. Here it is. In the background, I'm going to go ahead and roll this aerial footage. Now there's no commentary with it. I'll just tell you that a huge international relief effort is underway in the Philippines after Typhoon Haiyan killed up to 10,000 people in just one city. Now, the news is referring to it primarily as Typhoon Haiyan. Some of the local people, and a friend of mine, John Zepshawa, who just sent a note saying he's flying back to Washington, D.C. today, says that the local people are calling the Typhoon Yolanda. Typhoon Yolanda. So if you hear people refer to Typhoon Yolanda or Typhoon Haiyan, it's the same thing. It's just, this is what the local people are calling this Typhoon Haiyan. They're calling it Typhoon Yolanda. Volunteers from the Search and Rescue Unit Foundation filmed aerial views of the damage in Tacloban, and that's what you're seeing here in the background. Aerial footage also shows Cebu and Tacloban City and neighboring areas badly hit by this typhoon. And I may show that aerial footage again at the end. We've got a lot of video tonight, so let's cover let's cover those videos and what happened there in the Philippines in the since last Friday. Tacloban on the east coast of the Philippines is one of the worst affected cities following Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda. And families have resorted to burying their own relatives, carrying them on foot to the burial ground. A huge international relief effort is underway in the Philippines, but rescue workers have struggled to reach areas cut off since the storm. Rupert Wingfield Hayes has this report from Tacloban in the Philippines.
The only way to get someone buried in Tacloban now is to do it yourself. Joseph and his friends have come to collect the body of his sister. For 3 days, it lay uncovered in the street. Now, with a homemade coffin and masks to cover the stench, they must carry it on foot to the burial ground.
And the wife of Armando Sr. is still missing.
In the street where Joseph's sister lived, this man is trying to make a list of all his neighbors who are dead.
And he talked to the old woman, that one over here, without a coffin. And the 8 kids at the SUV.
8 children, so those are all children?
Yes.
All children in the car?
SUV. Of course, a man and a woman were found in that house there.
In that house over there?
Yes, that one, the 2-story house.
It's still really almost impossible to know how many people have died in this devastation, in this disaster. But to give you an idea, we've been told that in this one street here, 18 people died. That's 18 just in this little stretch of road here in one neighborhood. And many of the bodies are still lying around in the houses here or out in the baking sun, and they're starting to putrefy. In the next street over, Mildred and her family survived by clinging to the roof of their house. For these survivors, the biggest fear now is hunger. On the street outside, they're trying to dry out their waterlogged rice. No one knows for sure if it's still edible. Here the cry is the same. Where is the government? Where is the help?
The most problem here is food. Many people die. We need food. Water we have. Food, rice. That's all we need. That's the most important we need. And all the dead bodies must be buried.
Down by the sea, they're digging a grave for the mother of these 3 young men. Suddenly, one of her sons is overcome by grief and frustration. His mother's body is stuck under a fallen coconut tree, and they can't get it out. I ask her husband, Hill, how they are managing.
Very bad, I feel very bad. I could not sleep. She was a very good mother. I'm very hopeless. Everything is gone.
A short distance away, they've dug a much bigger hole, a mass grave. All afternoon the grim procession continues. We counted at least 30 bodies going in here. How many more informal graves like this are being dug along this coast, we don't know, except that it is many. Rupert Wingfield Hayes, BBC News, in Tacloban, Central Philippines.
Friends, extremely emotional and devastating situation there, and it relates, as you heard the young lady speaking, and you see yourself in these videos what's happening. The young lady spoke of people there being hungry. That makes this relate to not just one, but 2 seals from the book of Revelation. It relates to both the black horse, because of the people being hungry there, the tremendous famine situation they are facing now in the Philippines, and of course this relates to the 4th seal, the pale horse whose rider is named Death. They're not even able to count all the dead from this Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda. Again, this 4th seal, which you can see on your screen, if you count over 4, we've got number 4, and then the words pale, and we've got a pale green color there to depict this pale green horse of Revelation 6, again, whose rider is named Death, alongside whom rides Hades, hell, the grave. And what a massive example of death and Hades, hell, the grave this situation in the Philippines is. Sadly, friends, Jesus Christ described the activities of this horse in plain language by using 3 different terms. The first one that you've heard the most about, as he described it as loimos, meaning disease epidemics. And of course I've got a news story tonight. You'll see video on how now there's a great health concern for many reasons, and the diseases that are likely to come from that. You'll see that in this video coming up. But loimos meaning disease epidemics, the plagues of Egypt. And Jesus Christ also described this as seismos, seismic activity, commotions in the air, commotions on the ground, and this typhoon is certainly, it's a commotion of both. It's in the air with all the storm-like activity, and it on the ground causes the ocean to rise up and to crash into the land along with it. Some people were fighting drowning from floodwaters that hit them in the coastal areas. And then Jesus Christ also described this as Mark wrote it up in Mark 13, verse 18, as terake, troubled waters. And this means this can be both literally and figuratively. And that literally they had troubled waters. figuratively troubled waters as well. It also means. But I just wanted to put that on the screen for a moment and help you to see and think that this situation is definitely related to the seals of Revelation. And when the third and fourth seal happen in a big way, friends, then we should be seeing that this is a prelude to the fifth seal coming. Let me put the slide back up on the screen for just a moment. The fifth seal being the Great Tribulation. Now, Tarakeh, as Jesus Christ described it, Mark wrote it in Mark 13, verse 18, means troubles, troubled waters, trouble, but not the degree of trouble that is depicted by the mega trouble that is described by the fifth seal, where World War III, round 3 of World War begins again. There's a great martyrdom. There's a time of trouble in the Israelite nations, all the tribes of Israel, and the United States is one of them, of Joseph, the tribe of Manasseh. The UK is also one of them, of Joseph, the tribe of Ephraim. It'll be a time of trouble for these and other nations, Naphtali, Sweden, Issachar, Finland, all the other Israelite nations around the world. It'll be the time of the greatest trouble upon these countries, the Israelite people, and worldwide. It'll be the greatest time of trouble ever on the face of the earth. So bad that it's never been so bad before and will never, ever, thankfully, be as bad as what's coming again. All right, now, just a brief look at that in our chart. Typhoon Haiyan was forecast well in advance of landfall, but took the Philippines and global experts by surprise with the strength and destructive power that it had. The BBC's science editor David Schuckman explains the forces that contributed to the severity of this storm.
It takes a view from the air to see the extraordinary scale of devastation. Ferocious winds combined with massive walls of water to lay waste to whole communities. All this is the result of weather at its most extreme. For many people, there was simply nowhere to hide. The survivors are now left appealing for aid from the outside world. The typhoon had been forecast, but proved completely overwhelming.
A thing which made it particularly dangerous was the fact that it reached its peak intensity at the point that it made landfall. And on that basis, it might be one of the strongest typhoons to ever make landfall.
To understand this disaster, let's use our virtual reality studio to try to piece together how this catastrophic weather unfolded. Now, the people of the Philippines are well used to the threat of typhoons. They've had more than 20 this year alone, but nowhere near the scale of this one. Like all tropical storms, it began with a loose cluster of thunderclouds. Nothing unusual. But these quickly merged together to form a single weather system which started rotating, pulling air up into its centre. The storm stretched over 300 miles. By now, it was a typhoon, and the heat rising from the warm ocean kept adding to its strength. Higher temperatures mean more energy. This meant that in the eye of the storm and around it, the winds kept accelerating. Intense low pressure also lifted the sea surface to create a storm surge, another source of danger. For anyone in its path, only the strongest shelter would help them survive. Compare the town of Guyane before the disaster with the same view just after it. Almost every house has had its roof ripped off. Here's Tacloban, seen last year. It met a similar fate, the storm hitting with explosive force.
The devastation is staggering.
Today, an official from the Philippines was at a UN climate conference. He's from Tacloban and called for action on global warming.
We can fix this. We can stop this madness right now, right here.
It was an emotional moment. The fact is, though, that no single weather event can ever be blamed on climate change. But scientists do say warmer oceans could make the most vicious storms more likely. David Shruckman, BBC News.
Thank you, David. Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda has survivors who are increasingly desperate in their search for food and water, a missionary told the BBC. Kevin Vaca, originally from Austin, Texas, has lived and worked in the Philippines for 14 years. He told the BBC the situation was very dangerous and could get worse, with reports of looting and buses being attacked.
We were the first ones to arrive in Maya, at the very northern tip of the island. Maya's 100% destroyed. The thousands of people along the highway are squeezing the highway and begging. I think it's a very dangerous situation that could erupt. The poor people don't have, you can get water if you have money, but of course they've lost everything. So it's a situation here. I know we're having a big problem in Leyte with looting, and it could deteriorate here too. So I just heard from our presbyter. He called me about 30 minutes ago, who lives in Tacloban, and they were going to take a ship over to Tacloban tonight with the supplies. And the congresswoman told him, don't go, because they're dragging people off of buses, robbing them of all their valuables and their money and their food. And so we cannot even send relief food to the island of Leyte.
Very serious situation. Friends, some of you may have said when I commented earlier with the one girl's mention of people there being hungry. You heard it again in this report. In this next report, you'll hear how thousands of people have died, and many survivors are desperately awaiting aid in the Philippines after this typhoon swept the country. The exact number killed by Tropical Storm Haiyan is still unknown, but is believed that more than 10,000 residents died in the city of Tacloban alone. In this next video report with John Donaldson, you'll hear people saying, "We are hungry and thirsty."
The following report contains some disturbing images.
People here are grieving, homeless and hungry.
Now we're so very hungry and thirsty. That's why we're here, because even it's so, if you have water or food there, maybe you can give us.
Next to the runway, a makeshift hospital. Some patients being treated without anesthetics to numb the pain. This woman has just given birth. A baby girl named Bea Joy, born into a world upturned. And alongside them, another young woman is also in labour. People waiting here are desperate to get out on any plane they can find.
This is my dad's only chance for life. I said either we have to leave tomorrow morning, today, or we're going to go somewhere else. But he needs dialysis, and he's been off now for 2 days, and he's in critical condition. And so if the world's out there, send help, because these people need it.
Outside the city's airport, hundreds have been waiting, desperate for any aid they can get. They need shelter, and in many cases, they've been separated from their families too.
We need food. Mom, please help me. Mom, I am still here in Tacloban, and I am still alive.
Today, there was some hope at last with the arrival of the American military, a Marine Expeditionary Force, helping to organize the response.
It's a whole government approach. The embassy has asked for not just military, but USAID is here, international relief organizations are here. Obviously, the military has logistics capabilities that are unique.
The streets are busy as people search for their loved ones still missing.
This is the main street through the centre of Tacloban, and the destruction is almost complete. Barely a building standing, and there's the stench of death in the air. We've seen scores of bodies just in the few kilometres we've driven in from the airport, and behind us a couple of bodies bundled up in tarpaulin.
In the city, the country's interior minister is hands-on directing traffic, but the devastation is overwhelming, and so far there's little sign the government is managing to get aid out to the many in need. So people are doing whatever they can to help themselves. This used to be a supermarket. Those who have nothing are looking for anything they can find. But unless more relief comes quickly, the little food there is will run out soon. John Donnison, BBC News, Tacloban.
Thank you, John. Typhoon Haiyan has plunged the Philippines into a health crisis, and that's the fourth seal, being disease epidemics. The BBC's Tulip Mazunder looks at some of the main challenges ahead. She explains that lack of food and clean water are the most immediate dangers people are facing.
As a huge relief operation gets underway in the aftermath of Typhoon Haiyan, the enormous health implications also become clear. The immediate concerns are a desperate lack of food and clean drinking water, causing acute malnutrition and dehydration. The contamination of water supplies also increases the risk of potentially deadly waterborne diseases like cholera. Many of those injured during the typhoon are not receiving the urgent medical care they need after hospitals were flattened by the storm. Others who need regular life-saving medication or treatment are also no longer getting it. 12,000 women are due to give birth in the affected areas this week alone, according to the World Health Organization. At the moment, they face doing so in makeshift medical facilities. 8 countries, including Japan and the US, are flying field hospitals to the affected areas. Plus, urgent efforts are being made to re-establish water and sanitation infrastructure. The Philippines is a nation in shock. The death and destruction is unimaginable. So another major concern is the psychological impact on those affected, both now and for decades to come.
Friends, a British man visiting the Philippines has told the BBC he hid in a dive shop as Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda struck the country. Towns in Cebu province in the far north have suffered 80 to 90% damage from the typhoon, according to disaster workers. Luke Spence from Briton in North Yorkshire had left his accommodation in Cebu to go shopping when the storm hit. He also sent the BBC photographs he took of the aftermath.
I'd just arrived on the island the previous day, and I'd not had time to get any food or water supplies. So I ventured out from my accommodation on the Friday morning and was quickly gathered by a local into a dive shop and just said, "You have to stay here till the storm is out." The storm grew in strength between 8 in the morning and 11, and the debris from the local houses in the air was sheet metal, bits of wood, glass, and we were hiding in the back of the dive shop. There was about 8 of us. As the storm grew, there was more debris, there was more noise, and then the building we were in, which was a concrete building, also started to fall apart. We lost the roof, we lost the windows, we were basically huddling at the back of a room, behind chairs, pillows, anything we could find to protect ourselves from the wind. The destruction was absolute for the local villages, and we heard reports that very few people died on our island, which is a miracle to me, because there was nothing left of their homes, their boats. Even the dive centres made out of concrete were really badly damaged.
Friends, in this next video, Paul Collins has a report of how ships had to be evacuated during Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda.
Battered by strong winds and high waves, the crew on these two 278-ton ships have a lucky escape, according to Chinese state media. The ships had to be evacuated after the crews lost control of their anchors in high waves lashed up by Typhoon Haiyan. Strong winds in China's Hainan province pushed the ships more than 800 meters towards the shore in the coastal Sanya city on Sunday. Rescuers used rope ladders to help the 12 crew members climb down and re-anchored the vessels to prevent them from crashing into a nearby dam. No serious injuries were reported. Paul Collins, BBC News.
Okay, thank you for that report. The BBC's Joe Floto describes the scene in Tacloban.
There is evidence at the airfield that the aid operation is picking up, but when you get into town, you see thousands of people wandering the streets trying to pick out some kind of living from anything that's been left behind. These people have nothing, and they're trawling through the remains of their city, and there's no systematic distribution of aid that we can see at the moment. And while people are relying on reserves, on what was in the cupboard before this storm hit, if they can find it, that's going to run out pretty soon. And if there's more rain on the way, then this is going to become a desperate situation. But the roads are clogged with debris. There are still dozens and dozens and dozens of bodies just lying unclaimed. Some of them have been wrapped in cloth, but in many cases they're just a putrefying mass filling the air with a thick stench of death. And that's evidence that their relatives aren't around to recover the bodies. It's evidence of just how hard this town has been hit.
Dear friends, that's it for tonight's report this Monday evening of Nightcast. I did mention to you at the beginning that at the end I might roll again that aerial footage. Let's do that. I have a minute or two to go here. Here's the aerial footage again. And just a reminder, once again, a huge international relief effort is underway in the Philippines after Typhoon Haiyan, Typhoon Yolanda, as they locally call it, killed up to 10,000 people in just one city. Again, volunteers from the Search and Rescue Unit Foundation filmed these aerial views of the damage in Tanayan. Aerial footage also shows Cebu and Tacloban city and neighboring areas badly hit by the typhoons. And we'll close out with this, dear friends. Friends, oftentimes news is not happy news, and the news out of the Philippines is certainly emotional and sad and desperate. We'll have more tomorrow night, God willing, and the Creek Don't Rise will be back again Tuesday night with the day's current news related to the Bible and tell you how it relates to the Bible and prophecy. Thanks for joining me tonight. Until next time, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd, saying, so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on COGTV.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the COGTV.org video archive.